You're tuning in to the O&P Check-in, an SPS podcast. I'm Brendan Erickson, a regional sales manager at SPS. This show brings you the latest happenings in the O&P industry. We're unpacking trends and news from this tight-knit orthotics and prosthetics community. Co-hosting with me today is SPS Sales Account Manager and Team USA para-athlete, Travis Ricks. Welcome, Travis.
Thanks, Brendan. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Let's get started. Are holes in your patient's sleeve driving them crazy, but they can't afford to replace it? Sleeve Saver feels their pain because they've been there too. That's why Sleeve Saver invented a device that protects the sleeve from intrusions so it can last up to 5 times longer and save your patients big money. Visit spsco.com and search Sleeve Saver. That's SLEEVSAVER today to learn more.
Have you heard of SPS Clinical Education Days? In this free in-person event where you can earn 9 CEUs, hear from the SPS Clinical Services team and experts from Bulldog Tools Incorporated, Click Medical, and Cypress Adaptive as they delve into a wide range of relevant topics to help you enhance your clinic workflow and improve patient outcomes. Follow the link in our show notes to learn more, or select the resource tab on spsco.com.
Hello, listeners. I'm thrilled to welcome today's guest. He just got off the plane from Ecuador. Today, we have the executive director and co-founder of the Range of Motion project, David Krupa. Welcome, David.
Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you, Brendan. Nice to meet you, Travis. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, good to have you stateside for just 1 week, right?
That's right. Yeah, up here in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us to share about the awesome work ROMP does for underserved members of the limb loss and limb difference community. We want to hear all about it. But first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became personally involved in O&P?
Well, I became personally involved in O&P pretty much from the moment I was conceived. So I was born in Chicago, Illinois, but as I was developing in the womb, I had a congenital birth defect that was also emerging in my left leg. So by the time I was born, my parents had to take a decision to either try to preserve and make my foot work. They opted to have it amputated. And from about 18 months on, I was using a prosthetic limb. So I grew up receiving prosthetic care, going to follow-ups, went through the Shriners Hospital system in Chicago. I just had great access to prosthetic care my entire life. And as a below-the-knee amputee, I didn't really look at my disability as a disability. I was very blessed and very fortunate to have just this great care and access, which for many years was a part of my life, but not really a career thought. It was just something that I had to do, make sure that my prosthesis was fitting, that I was growing, that I was able to be active in school and carry on. In my undergraduate years, I started to think more and more about prosthetics as a career, how much it opened doors for me, created opportunities for me as a kid, how it facilitated my mobility, my activity, just all this stuff that kind of clicked and made a lot of sense to me. I just thought like, wow, that is an awesome field, a great career, how much I depend on this, and to learn this skill to be able to pass it on to others. So that's how I ultimately got into the field of O&P, was as having lived an experience as a user and then receiving just a lot of great guidance from my prosthetist and the team around me as to like how I could make this a career.
That's awesome. Now you're paying it forward.
Well, from very early on in my practice, wanting to serve or learn more about what was happening beyond the borders of the United States was always very intriguing to me. I was just like, I wanted to understand this because I started to receive information, both kind of passively and actively, that things were not like what I experienced as a kid growing up needing a prosthetic device for most of the world and for other kids like me. And I just thought, that's not right. How is that possible? You know, here is this rehabilitation field. Here's this collection of technology and techniques that have allowed me to have a very normal life. Why is it not getting to most people? So yeah, I sort of incorporated that very early on in my career as an interest, put myself out there volunteering with a variety of different organizations in different corners of the world. Again, very much enabled by my own mobility to travel to Pakistan, to serve in Haiti, to work in Central and South America. And through those experiences, just having my eyes open to a great global need for better access to quality prosthetic care is how I was paying it forward, as you said, or trying to.
Yeah.
David, being an amputee myself, I totally understand that we can take the benefits we've had here in America for granted. And obviously you're doing something about that with the Range of Motion Project. Can you explain a little bit about what ROMP is and how it came to be?
ROMP is a for-impact mobility organization. We're a nonprofit organization in the U.S., Guatemala, and Ecuador. We were founded in 2005, and the ROMP mission is to ensure access to high-quality prosthetic care for underserved people, improving their mobility and independence. Recognizing that millions of people globally are unable to access quality prosthetic care and therefore are living this very restricted and disabled life unnecessarily in many cases. And almost 20 years ago now, in 2005, ROMP was born out of Chicago, out of sort of my residency experience and some of my experiences traveling and volunteering abroad, but then finding a group of colleagues, coworkers, friends, and families that just said, you want to do something more to help other people with amputation beyond the U.S. access quality prosthetic care. We're in it with you. And that's what ROMP is all about. It's been a very organically grown community over the last 19 years of people who recognize the human dignity of all people with amputation, wish to empower them in a sustainable and high quality way, and do so by creating community wherever we operate. And here we are 20 years later, having served several thousand people in the Americas.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, we see it a lot just through our SPS scholarship essays. And I think that, the O&P profession is so rewarding in that you're giving back and empowering people. But then to see it taken to the next level, we see a lot of students that volunteer their time with you just, speak on and on about the experiences they had and how rewarding it was for them to do so and how they want to continue that. And it just seems to me like you guys are on to something really, really strong here, and 20 years proves it. So that's awesome. Congrats to you guys. And you guys mentioned that you recently came back from a volunteer trip to Ecuador with Colorado State University. And we'd just like you to ask you to, kind of walk through what that typical volunteer trip would look like and what you guys do on a day-to-day and what could people experience if they want to volunteer.
Sure. So, well, you did mention these, students and applicants that are filling out essays and also mentioning their experience with ROMP. Those experiences are through our volunteer clinical programs. ROMP has operations year-round. The clinical care is being delivered by our Latin American prosthetists, orthotists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, nurses, psychologists, all year round. But during the course of the year, we have 4 to 5 programs in both Ecuador and in Guatemala. These are our volunteer clinical programs. And the one we just had, it was with Colorado State University School of Biomedical Engineering. The undergrad students, we've set up a curriculum for the university to expose these undergrad students who are coming into our program with an interest in the field of prosthetics and orthotics, to provide them hands-on clinical and technical experience in the field. Our groups are generally arriving Friday evening. They tend to have Saturday, Sunday at the beginning of the program of cultural excursion, touring, getting to know Guatemala or Ecuador, and then just diving in deep with clinical work. So we're having patients come from all over Ecuador in this case that have been pre-qualified for ROMP. They're eligible patients for ROMP. And the volunteers in this particular instance as students are shadowing and assisting our clinical leads. We have prosthetists from El Salvador and Ecuador who are working with us and leading those groups for the clinicians, for the audience here who are certified prosthetist orthotists, residents, recent graduates of some of the programs in the US, you're coming down to serve, to take the lead on clinical cases, to work alongside your Latin American colleagues in ROMP clinics to make sound decisions, to have rounds, to work together to serve some very complex cases of amputation, sometimes multiple amputation, and doing the work. So during the course of that week, we're evaluating, casting, measuring, fabricating a wide variety of devices, upper and lower extremity. I mean, we really have access to all the types of technologies in our field because of the way we recycle prosthetic waste. And we're providing that care during the week. Patients are not only receiving prosthetic care during the clinical programs, they're receiving psychological support. So there's group therapy sessions happening while technical work is being done in the lab. There's physical therapy going on while adjustments are being made on other patients. And it's just a festival of mobility, really. And we had probably a total of 45 volunteers between our CSU students and local interpreters and physical therapist volunteers, prosthetists, and then patients and their families. We like to use the clinical programs as a way to educate our staff as well as our visitors. A lot of knowledge exchange happens there, as well as sometimes publicity around the event locally, right? We call in the press, we invite newspapers in, we invite TV crews in, and we give them this direct access to what we all know is the life-transforming field of prosthetics, in an instant. The camera crews there being able to see someone get out of a wheelchair and walk the first time, fitting patients who have waited for years for prosthetic care and within an hour are running. The amazing transformative stuff that happens in this field that you guys are all aware of, but doing it in a very concentrated effort in these clinical programs allows us to build bridges between our communities and cultures, allows that knowledge exchange to happen, and allows our staff to be able to treat a lot more patients with their limited capacity. So when our volunteers leave, those patients continue within the ROMP system and are receiving all of the appropriate follow-up care. They're receiving all of the appropriate check-ins, outcomes measures that we do at specific times throughout their care, and referrals on to any other services that they might need. So really comprehensive healthcare system that we've created, and the volunteer programs are a great way for our community to keep growing, as you said, right? We're hoping that by sharing these experiences with young practitioners and future practitioners, and of course, seasoned veterans of our field, we're encouraging this type of kind of professional philosophy, an approach to the profession that hopefully for many years to come, our ROMP community will continue looking for ways to help the vulnerable amputees of the world.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And I bet the attitude and the spirits are just so high at these events. I mean, are the people that are, traveling to see you as patients, are their minds blown, and are they waiting for weeks and months for these events to happen?
Once they hear about ROMP and they apply for care with ROMP, sometimes they've been waiting for years, unfortunately, for an option for prosthetic care. And last week we had this guy, Oscar, who was walking and then just broke out into song. Someone grabbed him a microphone, a speaker, and put on a backtrack. And he did this like impromptu concert for the whole crew.
Wow.
Just because he was that happy and that was his way. I mean, it is a beautiful thing to witness and to be a part of and to share. And certainly understanding our role as a pioneering organization that is trying to close the gap in access, that is trying to create stronger health systems that can make that experience that happened for 19 people last week available for 19,000, available for 19 million. I mean, we're talking about countless amputees that will not get to access that. And our work on the ground and our work of our community and our volunteers and our donors is to really shift the landscape of prosthetic availability in the Americas here in the coming years.
I imagine that the impact is so large here too, because mobility provides such a force for life improvement and underprivileged area. Talk about how a prosthesis can really benefit somebody in these areas.
Absolutely. So again, coming back to the ROMP mission of ensuring access to high quality prosthetic care for underserved people, improving their mobility and independence, we are very rigorously looking at those four aspects of our mission statement. One, are we serving the poor? Are we providing high quality care? And are we really improving people's mobility and independence? So we know that we are, because we measure outcomes for every single person throughout the course of their treatment, from the time they receive a prosthesis and then through the course of follow-up, which can go on for quite some time, as we all know. The things that we're measuring livelihood, insertion back into the workforce. We're measuring mental health factors. We're measuring mobility. And what we know is that the work that we do is getting our patients back to work, is helping our patients get back to school. It's improving people's physical mobility, but it's also helping our patients overcome depression and work through anxieties that are results of this tragic loss that can come from accidents, that can come from disease. So the prosthesis is a tool for change for the individual. That change impacts, of course, their family nucleus, their immediate community in positive ways. And then beyond that, if our patients are getting back to work, going back to school, becoming more independent, we know that that drives an effect through the society of true development, reduction in poverty, more stability. Stability is peace, people getting back to work, people improving their overall quality of life. And not only the work that we do for our patients, but also the work that ROMP has done as an organization to employ prosthetists and healthcare providers, to give people really good professional tracks, to develop the field itself, and to offer careers for people in Guatemala and Ecuador, where the majority of our workforce resides, and the majority of our workforce as well being Latin American women, which is something I'm just incredibly proud of, like what we've done to not only help our patients become more free and more independent and empowered, but also the people who do the service with ROMP. Imagine this. So I know a guy in Ecuador. His name's Victor. He lost both of his arms above the elbow to electrical burns. From the moment he lost his arms, his 8-year-old grandson became his pair of hands. Imagine what that means. His grandson was not always going to school, was helping to dress his grandfather, was helping to bathe his grandfather, to feed him, to go to the bathroom with his grandfather. So not only was Victor's independence compromised, but his grandson also was losing his freedom and independence. And the moment that we put really high quality mechanical body powered prostheses on Victor, and weeks later seeing videos of him sweeping and feeding his chickens and feeding himself, knowing that not only did Victor's life improve, but his grandson's life vastly improved, and he could start going back to school and not be granddad's hands.
That's amazing. Yeah, what you're doing is changing not only the amputees themselves, but the people around them as well, which is great. And that hands-on experience for the students has to be just such a unique thing for them to be able to go down and really be a part of. So really love that. I think, addition to that, I've had a lot of friends who've done your climbing for ROMP, and I think this is your 10th anniversary.
That's right.
I believe. So
That's right.
Tell us about that and what you got planned for the 10th anniversary.
Yeah, so every year for the last 10 years, we have organized climbing expeditions in Ecuador for people with limb loss and limb difference, climbing some of the tallest peaks in Ecuador, 18, 19, 20,000 foot peaks, glacier covered volcanoes, as a way to elevate the mission of ROMP, as a way to shout from the mountaintops that, mobility is for all. This is a human right. The prostheses aren't a luxury. We need to make them more accessible to everyone, and to demonstrate how effective they actually are. That these tools, that the right guiding, the right training, of course, the right physical fitness can actually allow you to access these remote and extreme conditions of planet Earth. It's become a statement for ROMP that is more, I think, focusing on the empowering aspect of mobility rather than the victimization of people with limb loss. We're proud to be a part of this community, and our climbers from the US, from Ecuador and beyond are, just incredible human beings that speak powerfully through their example as to what is possible after an amputation. And we are just really grateful to be able to show that to the limb loss community, because so much is possible after sometimes this thing that for many people seems like in the moment, the end of life, right? This can be a very terrible moment. And so we raise money with the Climbing for ROMP event. Much of that fundraising is really at the engine of our economic model, allowing ROMP to do the work that it does. So when you're climbing for ROMP, and raising money for ROMP, that way we're sharing and paying that mobility forward so that other people can access their summits in life, whether they're, literal mountain summits or simply just getting out the front door and getting on the bus and getting to work again. That can be the most difficult summit for somebody.
We talked a little bit about the impact that this all makes on the individual. You talked about the impact on the employment in these communities. You even talked a little bit about the impact on healthcare in general in these communities. Can you dive a little bit deeper into that and talk not only about the effect on the community of the limb difference and limb loss community, but also the community in general?
The impact of our work does have a lot of different layers, and certainly having talked about the direct layers on the individual, that's where it all starts. But we believe very much kind of in that ripple effect that helping to change one life for the better will affect everything else around it. In addition, our approach has been so sustained and so committed at the community level. We're not parachuting in from the United States periodically to deliver prosthetic care. We're building health systems locally that are owned and operated by local leadership and that are making a difference in their communities and are involving their communities. So, the long-term kind of strategic vision here is that the more poor amputees that we provide access to, or the more access that we ensure for people like them, they become sort of a catalyst for the systems level change that needs to happen by way of actual budgets within the health system for people with amputation, actual ease of access to technology crossing borders, reduction in tariffs and restrictions that limit access to prosthetic care, more professionals in the field. So the graduates that are coming out of the school in Latin America that we work really closely with, having real career opportunities in front of them, and the type of education that they need and training so that they can become very well-versed practitioners in this field. And believing that with our work, being sustained, being consistent, being really focused on the individual over many, many, many years, what we're seeing and getting closer to is what I believe is a tipping point, which will allow us to unlock the resources that exist in Ecuador, in Guatemala, and in other countries in Latin America to really create a movement, because there's more visibility now of our patients and amputees getting on the mountains, getting into races, standing in front of cameras, walking down the street, versus, begging for money, working, opening businesses. The more that's happening, we're getting closer and closer to a place where we believe that we're closing that gap in access in the marketplaces in Latin America so that real markets can emerge, so that real consumption, that sustainable consumption of prosthetic care from the state as well as from private insurance providers, as well as just the general sort of economic possibilities that more and more people have, this will become progressively more universal in the way that it's accessed. I think about some of our patients who have come in, we've served them, they've recovered mobility and kind of moved on or gone back to work or gone back to school. And I think of one guy particularly from years and years ago in Guatemala who, after recovering his mobility after multiple limb trauma from, again, electrical burns, he was working in construction, manual labor, guy with a big family, lots of responsibilities, and was able to go back to school, become a lawyer, and now is practicing law in Guatemala. He doesn't need ROMP anymore. And we see every year a growing number of our patients who no longer need ROMP. That means that they're going somewhere else. And that means that, in fact, we are closing that gap in access and we are driving towards universal access to prosthetic care and hopefully opening up, through doing so, opening up opportunities, marketplaces, and more sustainable provision of prosthetics.
Wow, the ripple effect is real. I mean, you guys are doing such great work. Could you tell me in year one how difficult it was just to provide transportation to your clinic versus year 20 now? I mean, I'm sure just even the simple access to care through transportation has increased a ton.
Absolutely. Year one, we were working in a very rural part of Guatemala, about 5 hours from the capital city. Just that highway drive alone sometimes would take twice as long. So, 8 to 10 hours. And that geographic barrier for our patients was very real. What we've done in recent years is we've relocated our operations to the capital cities of both Guatemala and Ecuador. We're centrally located. We're very plugged into the health system and to the majority of our patient population. And then our patient population that's further out, we're mobilizing care to them. We do mobile clinics. We set up satellite operations. We have a satellite clinic in the Ecuadorian Amazon, and we run mobile clinics to both the Amazon and coast of Ecuador, far into the indigenous central highlands and western highlands of Guatemala, to the Caribbean coast of Guatemala. So before we had very little resources and very little availability, and we had to sort of sit back and wait for people to come to us. But as a mobility organization, we know we need to mobilize. So we mobilize care. We're working at the community level. We have community health workers in Guatemala that do home visits with our patients. Every day they're out doing home visits. We use telemedicine and lots of, WhatsApp and video calls to improve access, if you will. Thinking about year one, the different types of barriers that we faced then over many, many years, we hack away at each one. Wherever we find these little barriers, we start to think, well, what can we do about that one? We're relentless. Our team is resilient. Our team is constantly striving for excellence and constantly questioning. And then, of course, we've been thrown all sorts of new twists, right? COVID and transportation restrictions, and that forced us to do more mobile, to go more telemedicine. Looking at challenge and failure from time to time as opportunity for change and growth. And I think that's just speaks to the commitment of our team and that sustained effort of ROMP for almost 20 years nonstop.
David, I will say your impact on the community, obviously abroad, has been matched by none from what I can see. But I will tell you, just having so many friends that have participated in ROMP and hearing the impact it's had on them, is truly life-changing for everybody involved. So really commend you on everything that you're doing. And what's next? What's next for ROMP? And for our listeners, how can they get involved?
Well, thanks for telling me that, Travis. And it's really wonderful to hear that your friends and, the people in our community and the people listening and the practitioners in this field and everyone that's really dedicated their lives and vocation to this field. We're all sort of elevating it every single day through our work, but it is really nice to hear that it's making an impact on your buddies too. That's what we hope, right? We hope we can continue sharing that, and that's why ROMP continues to grow. So what's next for ROMP is to just keep leaning into that sustained growth. The demand for what we do is huge. The opportunity to provide it more and to create more access to prosthetics is real. And we have really developed a solid, tried and true, tested model for providing and for creating access to high quality prosthetic care. We know how to do it well. We know that it has an impact. And in order to do it more, the ways that our listeners hear that the community can help it become more possible and to scale it, really 4 ways: to give to ROMP, to volunteer with ROMP, to climb with ROMP, and to recycle with ROMP. So recycling prosthetic waste, I'm in our Denver warehouse. 95% of all the prosthetic componentry that ROMP uses is recycled, and it's processed and inventoried and shipped out where it's needed. So if anyone here has a prosthetic device they're not using, stuff laying around the shop that they don't know what to do with, you can go to our website, rompglobal.org. That's ROMP Global, all one word, .org. And you can request shipping labels pretty easily and send us the stuff, and we'll recycle it and we'll put it back to use. You can recycle with ROMP. You can climb with ROMP this summer. Again, you visit our website. It's easy instructions on how to basically get out and move this summer. Climb is the word we use, but it could be that you live in Texas, where I think best elevation you'll find is about 200 feet somewhere. So, just get out and move, get out and do some exercise and do it alongside the ROMP community in solidarity with people who wish to access their mobility. Volunteering. For the audience here, we really, really need skilled clinicians, technicians, practitioners to come and volunteer with ROMP, share your skills. We've got some specific programs coming up: July in Guatemala and Ecuador, August in Ecuador, October in Guatemala, and November, we're doing our first volunteer clinical program into the Ecuadorian Amazon. We're only taking very skilled clinicians on that first program because it's pretty remote, and we're going to have a small strike force going in. But we're opening up more access in the Ecuadorian Amazon through that. And finally, donating to ROMP, whether it's $1 or 100,000. I mean, we convert dollars and recycled componentry and volunteer hours and the work of our team into mobility in real time. We're providing for about $1,500 average, high quality prosthesis with all the follow-up, physical therapy, psych support, just a lot of other services to patients. And this year we'll be providing just over 500 devices between Guatemala and Ecuador. And frankly, none of this happens. A friend of mine likes to say that there's no mission without a margin. He knows exactly who he is when I say that, if he's listening, and I appreciate you so much, but it's true. So we depend greatly on donations and on the giving within this community and beyond. Those are the specific ways. You can learn how to do them on our website, rompglobal.org.
Well, David, I'll tell you that it has been a lifelong goal to be able to join you guys, and hopefully one of these days I'll be doing part of the climb and raising some funds for you. But
sure, man.
20 years amputee, I've got lots of prosthetics, so I know I can at least donate some of that. So I'll go through. Are you guys any restrictions on how old the prosthetics are or any of the components?
So yeah, there's some specifics on the website, kind of under our Get Involved section. There's a drop down, and in the prosthetic recycling section, there's some specifics there about like what we really, really need and what we frankly can't make much use of. So you have a great experience, and everyone is welcome. For our volunteer clinical programs, we've had high school students to retirees of all backgrounds and of all professional skills, not only in the O&P field. And that's another piece of what ROMP is about, is just kind of like keeping our minds and eyes open, involving people. And when people come together, great things happen. Those synergies, those real connections across borders, across countries, across cultures and languages. We're all human beings on the same planet here. And this is an opportunity to practice that, to kind of step out of the tribalism for a while and the separation, and maybe act, together for the positive evolution of the human race. So you don't need to be climbing with us to be a part of what we're up to. Feel free to volunteer with ROMP, get involved, reach out, and it's a pleasure to get to the opportunity to talk about what we do and share it with your audience. You guys are all great.
Oh, thank you for saying that, David. But you truly are doing all the hard work here. We're just trying to get the news out a little bit more. But really, thank you so much for joining us today. We always leave a little bit of time at the end here. If you have any topics that we didn't discuss or somebody you'd like to thank, go ahead and go for it.
If anyone is interested, this is another facet of the ROMP universe that is called ROMP Te Mueve in Spanish, so ROMP Te Mueve. This platform, this is a website, romptemueve.org, so that's ROMP, TEMUEVE. This is for Spanish speakers. This is a resource all in Spanish for people with limb loss and practitioners in the healthcare field, as well as prosthetists. This resource, we hope, would potentially, dovetail into your own practices. And for anyone that's listening, we have a lot of Spanish-speaking patients in North America that we serve. So perhaps ROMP Te Mueve will be a growing resource for the community.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Travis, I know that this is near and dear to your heart, and you're smiling big right now, and I'm smiling. David, you've left a big impression on us, and hopefully our listeners too. So thank you so much for everything you're doing, and the entire team at ROMP as well.
To learn more about ROMP or connect with David on LinkedIn, follow the links in our show notes.
Thank you for listening to the O&P Check-in, an SPS podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, be sure to leave a review and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a question or topic suggestion? Email us at spspodcast at spsco.com. See you next time.